Oh, well, we're recording now. And tonight I'm so happy to welcome Nitzan Tal, the filmmaker of 8,000 Paperclips. Hi, Nitzan.
Hi, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for well, it's not that late. You're an hour later than us in New Jersey. So we're very curious about you and about the film. So can you share a little bit about, your bio and who you are and um, so we can get to know you a little?
Okay. I grew up in Israel in a kibbutz. My parents and brother are still in the kibbutz. I studied veterinary medicine in Israel. I always enjoyed photography as a hobby. My grandfather was an avid photographer, so he gave me my first camera and a dark room. But at the time, I didn't think of photography as a profession. I don't think that in the kibbutz I knew any professional photographers. Medicine, my stepfather is a physician, so I was very much interested in medicine, but I didn't see myself as a human physician, so I went for veterinary medicine, and I enjoyed very much. And then we moved to New Jersey. My husband had a job and we relocated to New Jersey. And at some point, while working as a veterinarian, I started taking classes in Manhattan in the International Photography Center and other places. And then I got into photography again, and then I continued from there. So I really enjoyed documentary photography, and I was able to take some time off work and volunteer as a photographer for non-profit organizations in South America. I was in Ecuador and Guatemala. Actually, the organization in Ecuador was the one that introduced me to the issue of refugees, because that's an organization that works with refugees. And then one organization asked me if I can also do video, and I was like, well, I don't know, I think there's a video button on my still camera, but I'm not really sure how to operate it like properly, other than press the button, obviously. So I decided to take classes in video and video editing, and I kind of liked it. I made my first film, a short film called It Takes Balls, during one of those classes. And at the end of the class, my teacher said that I should submit it to film festival. And I was like, no, and yeah, sure. And it got into a couple of festivals, and I got hooked. So since then, I'm still doing a little bit of veterinary medicine once a week, and I still do still photography, and I'm still working on movies.
Okay. Do you have pets at home?
I have 2 cats. Yeah, I just threw her out so she won't jump on the computer when I'm talking. But yeah, I have 2 cats.
Oh, okay. So I forgot to mention to the people joining us for this conversation, if you have questions, just put it in the chat and they'll be relayed to us. And I know Nitzan will be happy to, answer your questions too. So how do you end up making 8,000? So you have this one short, and then your next film is 8,000 Paperclips.
So there was one in the middle. So I made a film for an organization in Philadelphia that works with inner city school children on writing programs. And it was November 2015, 6 years ago, exactly 6 years ago. And I was just finishing the work on that other film. And I got a text from somebody I know around here, and she said, someone is looking for a videographer for a project in Uganda. Are you interested? And I was like, of course, I've never been to Africa. Sounds interesting. Yeah, let me hear more. And the next day I spoke on the phone with Rafael. He was in Israel, and he told me about the project and that he was doing with the refugee children. And to be honest, I wasn't very clear about what he was doing with them and why, and what was he planning to continue with. But he sent me a link to a TV program about the deported children. And that was, I was blown off by just the story. And I mean, 5 minutes into the film, I went to look for the tissue box because seriously, I mean, I was sobbing. And I knew that I have to go and meet those children, even though, I mean, seriously, I wasn't really clear about what Rafael exactly was doing. By the time I realized that there's no budget and Rafael is actually hoping that I can pay my way, and I was just hooked on the story, and I knew I was gonna go. And it was we really rushed into it because the children were going on vacation in December and he wanted to be there for Hanukkah. That was, so I joined at the stage of the visit to the Jewish community in Namatumba. The first part of building the sculpture, that was another cinematographer. I wasn't involved at this point. So I went and we spent 10 days there, and it was a very, very intense 10 days. Some difficulties. Rafael is not an easy person to get along with. He has very clear ideas of what he's planning to do, and my limitations as a videographer. Okay, wait a second, do you mind if I just set up my equipment? Or, he doesn't always wait. But overall it was a very, very interesting week. And we kept in touch. And then a few months later, when he was invited to show the project in San Diego at the museum, he asked me if we can edit a short film to accompany the sculpture. And we did. I did it with my editor, Liki Tapuach. And it was a 26-minute short. It's on my website. And that's when I realized that I really want to make a full documentary about it. I felt that in the short there were so many questions and subjects that I couldn't touch on, and I decided that I want to make the film. And yeah, that was in 2016, and it took 4 years. I traveling to San Diego and Israel, and again to Uganda, and yeah, and then we finished at the beginning of 2020. Not the best timing.
Right, everything. And just so you weren't in South Sudan?
No.
Because I was wondering, like, where do you stay when you go to South Sudan?
No, I've never been there. Hopefully one day.
Day, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so how do you fund a project like this? Like the film, first of all, the travel, and then the film. Where did the funding come from?
And it's, in this case, it's just me. It's self-funding. So it's me. I'm fortunate enough that my husband has a successful company, and instead of wasting the money on, I don't know, accessories and bag and expensive clothing, that's my passion, the films. And then I also make everything very low budget. So I traveled by myself, which makes it obviously harder. That's part of the difficulty. no sound person or assistant to set up your stuff. I carry everything by myself, or I had the teenagers were helping me, obviously, and carrying my things, and you know, but you do everything by yourself. It's a low budget film. And the cinematographer that did the original material, the first visit, allowed us to use his material at no charge. So you find ways, and you find people are willing to help.
Right. This whole story is based on people who are willing, to help, because there's like no, there was nothing, there was no organization, there's still not, a huge movement.
Yeah.
So we have a few questions here. So someone is asking, are you still in touch with Rafael, with the artist?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, me and Rafael are in touch all the time. We through WhatsApp, sometimes once in a while we talk on the phone, usually long conversations. Yes, we're actually working on another project together now. So we talk. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, so did you film the part where he just talks about his depression, and
Yeah.
that was that what you filmed? I felt that was a very intimate, uh like I wasn't sure how, like maybe it was about him, but like what do you think that added to the film? Because I was curious about him anyways, so because he was the artist and the project and everything, but can you why did you decide to include that in
Yes.
the film?
The reason I wanted to include it because I thought it was really important to tell how he got to art and how he came up with a thought. I mean, not that he's the first person who thought of art as a healing mechanism, but I wanted to show that that's something, it's not something that he just read about in some article and was like, oh, that's what I want to do. But it's something that came there very deep from inside him and from his experience. And I thought that that was a significant piece of information to add to the story, to his story. And it's actually, if you're asking about, like those decision making. So it's definitely a lot in documentary. That's a lot of things that go into this consideration. I mean, this is what the documentary filmmaking is deciding what goes in, what doesn't, where to place it. Do you put it chronologically at the beginning, but then people don't know who he is yet. People don't care about him yet. So you have to wait until maybe you know him, and then people think that they understand, but then you give them this little bit of other information, and they're like, you thought you know, but you don't,
Right,
or you didn't, or
exactly.
so we're trying to play with it, obviously. Yeah.
Exactly. Like um you can kind of tell that the film is in kind of in two parts, right? Like and the first part was interesting, but like as it continued, like I was so anxious to see what happened and what happened to the children. And so we also have some questions about that, about let's see, are you still in touch with the children? Must be in their 20s now, some
Yes.
of them.
Mhm.
Are you
Yeah.
in touch with them? And do you know about what they're doing now? Like, do you have any?
Yes, yeah, I am in touch with them. And yeah, so the five teens that were with us in the village, in the Jewish village, they're the one that I'm the closest with, because I spent that long week with them, and we became close. So Tedo and Veronica are siblings, and they're in Egypt. they actually did not graduate high school. They both have learning disabilities, and they were getting a lot of support in Israel. And in Africa, that's not a thing. That was not available for them. So they dropped out, and their parents were in Egypt, were again refugees in Egypt. That's actually something that happened to many of the families that were deported from Israel. Many of them did not stay in South Sudan because South Sudan didn't become more welcoming over the years since they ran away from, first time. So they went back to wherever they thought they felt more comfortable before that. So Veronica and Tedo are back with a family in Egypt. They do have a younger sister that's still in the project, Regina. Victoria did graduate high school, and she's now studying in a university in Kenya, in Nairobi. And actually, I ended up being her sponsor. So at some point, she lost her sponsor, and I learned about it, and I offered to be her sponsor. So we're in touch all the time because I take care of her needs, and we're also, we talk once in a while. Ramkel is still in high school. Iwin graduated, but then she got married and has a baby. She has, I think, a toddler. Actually, she should be now like 3 or 4, little girl. Some of the other ones, Christina and Deng, actually went back to study in Israel as foreign students on a foreign visa, which is much more expensive. And the reason they were able to do it is because they have their sponsors in Israel had the means to pay for that. So they went back to study in Israel, but they didn't get a refugee status or any citizenship or anything like that, just like foreign students.
Right. Actually, that was one of the questions that just popped up now. Have any of the children considered going back to Israel, or like how did that happen? Like, was it difficult to get the visa, or like
I don't think so. I think once they were accepted to that, I wasn't involved in that, but I think once they were accepted to an international school and they were able to get it, the studies are expensive. So that's yes, 3 or 4 of them are at least went for high school. I think they graduated high school last year. I know Christina stayed in Israel going to university. Tumbush, that's a girl that's on the poster behind me. She's in the Netherlands, I believe, or something like that. Yeah. The Come True has a very nice Facebook page. So if anybody is interested to learn more about the organization, it's on Facebook. It's Come True, and that's where I learn of some of the developments also.
Yeah. So, are there any? Did any of this? I don't know if you know this or not. It just occurred to me now. Were all the South Sudanese deported, or were some allowed to stay?
I believe that most of them were deported. I think maybe there were a few very specific cases that were not deported. But as far as I know, it was the South Sudanese community as a whole it was decided that they will be deported once South Sudan got independence.
Independence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't last very long though, did it?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know one of the things in the film, it seemed kind of as sad as it was that they were asked to leave what was their only home. I think Rafael says in the film that he thinks that one of these children one day will be the president of South Sudan, that things, even though the country was so underdeveloped or not, that they were still a little hopeful. And you can kind of tell how the hope wanes, how it's hopeless by the end of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the children that got into the project are the lucky ones. So many others were not that lucky. So many, and as you can see in the film, and we really touched on it just a little bit because I didn't want to make it into like a tragedy of refugees film, because there's many other films about that. So we really just touched on a little bit of the suffering. But they've been through a lot, and there's a lot of other stories that we didn't tell. So, and also many of them, some of them, yeah, didn't graduate high school because they couldn't make it up. They all went down many grades when they moved to Africa, because in Africa, unlike in the US or in Israel, you know, an Israeli child comes to the US and he's 14, he's going to be put into seventh or into eighth or ninth grade, and he's going to get help. In Africa, it's not like that. So what happens in Africa, there's a state exam, and you're placed according to that. And children that graduated seventh or eighth grade in Israel were placed in second grade because their English wasn't amazing, and they knew nothing of, like, I don't know, Ugandan history, and they didn't know math terms in English, and there was nobody to work with them and prepare them for the exam. So Victoria, who was, I don't know, I think like in seventh or eighth grade in Israel, was placed in second grade. Now she's a very smart young woman, so she was able to jump a few classes ahead, but still, she only went to university at 22. There was still a lot to catch up. So and they haven't, all those children were, or most of them were not able to stay with their families. They were all separated from their families, and they see them very, very rarely. I mean, sometimes every other year, because traveling is costly. So I don't think so. You know, if they stayed in Israel, they could have lived with their families. Their families would have been safe.
Yeah, well, I was reading about that, about the court decision for the deportation. I feel like, or somebody said, you know, it's not, you know, there's a lot of sides to the story, and somewhere in the middle there's a truth. And you know, I'm not sure why the courts felt it was the right thing to do. It was 1,000 people or something. It wasn't,
Yeah.
you know.
As you can see, I did not get into the politics in the film at all,
I know. I
because
know. I had to look
yeah.
that up to like kind of remember, because, you know, like I've been in South Tel Aviv a lot, you know, like around the area, the bus station and Rehov Salamet, like in all that area. And now there's even there was a television drama that was made about the refugees from Africa and how they get to Tel Aviv and their lives in Tel Aviv. So I did notice that you like weren't like, this is the fact, this is where they are, and this is the story.
Yeah.
So is there going to be a follow-up film, do you think?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Nothing that I'm planning right now about that.
Okay. So, you know, the whole paperclip thing, have you you know, there's a town in Tennessee, I forgot the name of the town, where they collected 6 million paperclips. Because, so I was just wondering if Rafael, like if he knew like the significance of paperclips, or if it was just like a art form for him, or media, like,
Yeah.
you know, if there was any bigger meaning to the paperclip.
So I asked him that. And he said that he did not. I wasn't familiar with the 6 million paperclip project before I started working on that project, and then somebody brought it to my attention. And the same thing with Rafael. He wasn't aware of it before, and only after someone, of course, somebody will be like, oh, that reminds me of. So yeah, he wasn't aware of it before. He says, but yeah.
Yeah, because when I first saw the title of the film, I said, oh, I think we might go there this summer to the museum. Yeah. So what should people take away from the film? Like, what's the message that you really want people? Oh, someone put it in, Whiteville, Tennessee. That's where the museum is, Whiteville, Tennessee.
I think my main takeaway from this whole project and my involvement is the importance of connections. And that's also why I called the film 8,000 Paperclips, because I felt that the connection is the most important thing. So, I mean, the connection of the children, first of all, and their families to their friends in Israel is what saved their lives. I mean, it's in the film a little bit how Leah got involved with that because her son was best friends with one of the deported refugees. So that's one connection. And then Rafael and the children and me, as you know, I'm from the outside, but also I became connected to the project. And the connection with the Jewish community, and all these connections, and then later Rafael and the Syrian refugee and his family, and another organization that works with refugees in San Diego. Not everything got into the film, obviously.
Right.
I think these connections are really, really important, and it's like, I mean, I think we notice it more than ever in 2020 when we were not able to meet people in person. And all of a sudden you realize that, yeah, you can take classes online and you can do festivals online, you can do everything online, and it's so convenient, and you don't sit in traffic and you don't have to find parking. But there's something missing, the human connection, the face-to-face. It's just something that is not, that there's no substitute for it. So that was my main take from this whole story for myself personally. And that's one of the things that I tried to convey in the film.
So is there something that you left on the cutting room floor that you're sorry about, that that now you wished you would have put in the film?
Wow. I don't know. I try not to dwell on these things. There's a lot of little stories and little facts, and yes, that didn't get into the film. We also had at the beginning like a longer version of 73 minutes, but we felt that it was just a bit too long, so we edited 10 minutes out. So yeah, there's always more, and yes, you know, we call it the babies. We leave the babies on the editing room floor. Yeah, there's always stuff, but it's yeah, you have to make the decisions, and once you make the decision, you
have to live with it.
Have to live with it. Yeah.
So there's another question from does Rafael have plans to do a project in another country?
Yes, so Rafael, not with refugees. Rafael, one of the projects that he's working on is actually in San Francisco with relatives of 9/11 victims. So he was able at some point, I don't know who the Port Authority, maybe they were looking to do something with metal that was left over from the Twin Towers, and there was some kind of a process and people could apply to get that, and together with somebody in New York, a professor in New York, they applied and they got some of the materials, and he's working with in a university in San Francisco, I don't remember, architecture school, on a project that will involve building a memorial from those from these metal pieces, and the project supposed to involve the families of some of the victims.
The victims. What's your next project?
So you mentioned before the little story in the middle of the film about Rafael's depression.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually my next project. It's it's funny because I learned about this story, so it's much more. We only show a very tiny piece of it, but basically, you know, the story of Rafael and his depression, and then he decided to build this giant screw, and he took this screw on a journey around the world.
Right.
And when we met, he told me this story briefly, and then I read about it. There were a couple of articles about it. And I was like, I remember saying to my editor, that's a story we should make a movie about. But then she was like, oh, well, but we don't have any material. It happened 20 years ago. And a year later, when we were already in the middle of this project, he one day asked me, will you be interested in making a film about my journey with the screw? I guess at this point, he decided that he trusts me enough.
Right.
And I was like, how am I going to make a film about something that happened 20 years ago? You know, I don't have any visuals. What am I like? What do you mean? I filmed the whole thing. I have hours on hours of video. So yeah, so that's what we're working on now.
Okay.
It's a very different film. It's a very different feel and very different kind of story, but yeah, it's a story about mental illness and art. And
so here's a question. Are you a person who believes that art can be healing?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I definitely think that there's a lot of things that I'm not sure. I don't know if art can change the world. I don't know if art can change minds, but I think it definitely has a healing properties. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's no more questions from. I know it feels a little bit odd to like we're talking to people, but we can't see them.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with
Thank you.
us, and we'll look for your next project.
Thank you.
And hopefully, if you're ever in Chicago, we'd love to host you. And we look forward to seeing your new work.
Thank you very much. Thank you for showing the film, and thank you for having me.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Good
Bye.
night.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Excellent job.
I think it was okay. I got a little,
I get tongue-tied all the time,
I know.
but it was good. She's very nice.
This is
I
really great.
definitely like.
She funded that project by herself.
I'd like to, I want to make sure that we know when that next film comes out, because we could use that as part of the Social Justice Festival.
Yeah. She has a website.
I will check it out.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Heard you got a surprise today. Or you might have gotten a surprise.
She's here. She's here. You know, Brian said something about it the other night. Apparently she didn't hear. I had the table set already when she came for 5 people. She didn't notice. So clueless.
Oh, wow.
All right,
Your
we're gonna
family
go.
likes a good surprise.
Yep. All right, we're gonna go have
Okay.
dessert. Bye, Abby. I'm
Bye.
working from
Bye,
home
Susan.
tomorrow.
Take care.
You too, Susan. You're
I'll be
working
home
from
tomorrow. I'm not coming to the
Okay.
office. And I'm off on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Nice. Did you hear? District 65, which is where Eli goes to school.
Yes, I saw in the news.
Yeah, they shut down.
They need to get him out of there, Abby.
Can't stand it. I wish they'd move. Okay.
They have no desire to move back to Israel.
Well, Myron doesn't. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know if they want to go the private school route and they don't want to live.
Why don't they
Yeah.
move into your house while you're in
We
Israel?
offered them to even just buy our house at a
Right.
discounted. You know, you would think, I don't know what they have against Northrop, but you would think it was like the worst
Yeah,
place.
they
in the
have
world.
award-winning high schools like we have here in
I
Buffalo.
know. Like you would think it was like the worst place in the world to live. So.
All right.
Okay.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Talk to you later.
Have a good night.
Bye. You too.
Bye.
Bye.